Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well. Here's another video about the great Joe Jones, and this video is about the amazing shuffle beat that he had. Joe Jones is maybe my favorite shuffle drummer. He and Sam Woodyard are my two favorites for shuffles, I think. But Sam Woodyard is a little more famous for playing shuffles, and there are a lot more examples of him doing it. But Joe Jones just had such an amazing and unique shuffle. So I think what I'll do, I'll play you the basic pattern, then I'll point out some things that I like about it and that I find interesting. I'll show you some variations that Joe Jones would play, and then I'll give you some examples of recordings where you can hear Joe Jones play this, and that's really the main thing, because you got to hear how he does this to really just hear the feel that he gets and the sound and the effect. So always go to the source, always go to the masters. But to the best of my ability, here's the Joe Jones shuffle. So at first, it seems pretty basic. The shuffle is all with the right hand on the hi-hat, the left hand is playing the backbeat on 2 and 4. Pretty standard, and in fact, if you just saw this beat written out, I think it would almost look more like a rock and roll kind of shuffle. A lot of the times when jazz drummers play a shuffle, the shuffle is at least in part with the left hand on the snare drum, and the right hand might be doing it as well on the hi-hat or the ride cymbal, but there's usually a bit of a shuffle going on with the left hand. Joe Jones has the shuffle all in his right hand, and the left hand is playing the backbeat. Now, a few things that I like about this, because the way he plays it, it's actually a very jazzy shuffle. So he's playing it on the half-open hi-hat, and sometimes you'll hear him play this on the closed hi-hat, occasionally on the ride cymbal, but he mostly plays this on the half-open hi-hat and really just kind of riding the hi-hat like a ride cymbal. And with the 2 and 4 on the snare drum, a thing that's nice about this, it's a backbeat, but it's light. It's not overpowering. It's still really, he's leading with the cymbal. So the backbeat is kind of underneath that. Every now and then, maybe for a shout chorus or a real effect, he'll bring out the backbeat, but the standard pattern that he plays, the backbeat is not overpowering. And another thing that he's doing there, he's playing that backbeat with his left hand as a dead stroke. So I've talked about dead strokes and dead sticking before, and Joe Jones used this technique a lot, as did a lot of the great drummers. So instead of letting the stick rebound, he's pressing it into the head. And depending on how much pressure you apply, this can almost sound like a very short little buzz. You can vary the length of it, and it's a nice thing because you get a muted sound, but it's also a full sound. So another nice thing about this beat is because the backbeat is not so prominent, Joe Jones can change his left hand pattern around a bit, play little figures, he'll do little different things, little offbeats, little drags, and he can really do this without losing the feel of the shuffle, because again, he really has that going on the hi-hat with his right hand. Sometimes, if you're playing a real powerful shuffle and there's a really strong backbeat, that's great, but then if you try to do other things with your left hand and you go away from that backbeat, sometimes it can kind of lose the feel of the shuffle. It can just be hard to keep that feeling going, making those changes. But with this pattern, because he's really leading with the cymbal and the backbeat is underneath, he could do different things and sort of still maintain the flow. So maybe things like So he can do all these things, and he would always, of course, put them in just the right place when he would vary the pattern, but it makes it much closer to a jazz kind of thing in the same way if he was just swinging on the hi-hat. It's really the same thing, just adding one extra note there in the right hand. And another thing he would sometimes do with the backbeat, sometimes he would play that backbeat as a rim shot, but he would do it as a dead stroke rim shot. So and that's a really great sound. And that backbeat rim shot, with a dead stroke or not, is really a part of the sound of so many great players, great older drummers, Cliff Lehman, George Wetling, Sid Catlett, Gene Krupa, Barrett Deems. A lot of them would use that sound, that dead stroke rim shot, or a rim shot backbeat, maybe not with a dead stroke, but Joe Jones really played that with a dead stroke. So I just think it's a really great shuffle that works in so many different situations. The first time I heard Joe Jones play this, I was in high school and I saw the documentary Jazz on a Summer's Day about the Newport Jazz Festival. And believe it or not, Joe Jones is playing with Chuck Berry. And he plays Sweet Little 16 with Chuck Berry, and he plays this shuffle beat. And of course, it works great, and it blew my mind that Joe Jones was playing with Chuck Berry, but they sound great together. Since then, I heard Joe Jones play this in some other situations. There are some recordings with Milt Buckner, but my favorite example of this Joe Jones shuffle is on an album he did with Duke Ellington and Johnny Hodges called Side by Side, and the whole album's great, and Joe Jones is of course amazing on every tune. But the album ends with a blues called You Need to Rock. And it's just a great example of Joe Jones playing this shuffle. In fact, he starts it by himself, playing it on the closed hi-hat. And then he goes to that half-open hi-hat and he stays there for the whole tune and plays some of those variations I was talking about, but really just keeps this beat going in just an incredibly propulsive, yet subtle way. It's really something to hear. And I think if you have a shuffle that works great with both Chuck Berry and Johnny Hodges, that's a pretty swinging shuffle. So definitely check out those recordings. Check out Joe Jones playing this. It's a shuffle that I love to use all the time. It's just one of the many, many great things that Joe Jones could do on the drums. So thanks everyone, thanks for watching. Thank you everyone for all the nice comments and the support, and I will be back soon.